hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. So we're going back to studying Genesis. So after, just to recap, in chapter 32, the famous chapter of Jacob wrestling, how he was begging the angel that appeared to him, the messenger of God, to bless him, but the angel refused for obvious reasons. It was a time for Jacob to meet his brother whom he had cheated. He cheated his brother maybe around 20 years earlier. 20 years ago, Jacob stole from his brother the blessing and the firstborn right. And now he's going to meet his brother who came to meet him with an army. And they told him that, the messengers, the scouts of Jacob told him, your brother is coming with camels and swords and spears. And Jacob was terrified. So he spent the night on the east side of the Jordan struggling with God. And then at midnight, a man appeared to him. So it seemed like the man was leaving the place. So Jacob had to took hold of him and forced him to stay and to bless him. And the angel refused. So apparently from Hosea, we know, Hosea said that he actually cried and begged the angel to bless him. And the reason why he was crying and begging, because he's going to meet his brother. And how many of us, when we are in stress and we feel like there is no place to turn to, we go and kneel at our bedroom and cry and raise our voices to God and invest all this energy of anxiety, giving ourselves to God. And immediately when you think of this situation, I think of Gethsemane. Same struggle. Jesus had nowhere to turn to, nobody, no one. He knew that. He knew that there would be no one to help him. And it is repeated in this chapter, the chapter 32. Jacob had been alone the whole night. He had 4 wives and 12 male children, and we know 1 female. That's Dinah and maybe others. But it's a big tribe. He's going back with an army. But he, in that night, was completely alone. And he had to beg God for blessing. And why is the struggle? Because he knew he doesn't deserve a blessing. He's going to deserve whatever his brother justice demands. His brother was wronged, and his brother deserved to be served. There would be something to be taken away from Jacob. And he begged God that he would survive and his family would survive. And because he said, if he comes, he will kill the mother and the child. He will leave him nothing. And at the end, he will kill him. So Jacob begged God. He said, if you don't stand with me tonight, my brother will finish me. So God first resisted him. And then at the end, because he persisted, it was a matter of life and death. Jacob could not afford leaving God, letting him go. Sometimes this is what our case is. We go into stressful situations and very difficult, tough times, and we think, okay, God's not going to be with me. I cannot twist his arm. I cannot force him to bless me or be with me or, deal with this situation on my behalf. But apparently, Jacob is saying something different. So why everybody is not confident when they stand before God in prayer? This is something that I think Jesus had dealt with in the New Testament. I think if you can go to Luke, the Gospel of Luke. I'm recapping on chapter 32 now. So I'm going to go to Luke chapter 18 and have a similar situation. So Jesus in Gethsemane is one, but this parable is another. And the parable is dealing with the idea of why we don't go to prayer when we are stressed or we are in difficulty. I hear people that go into fights. They face a terrible diagnosis or a bad news of their finances or their job or something. And the last thing they think about is going to pray, going down on their knees. Chapter 18. Why does that happen? Jesus is answering this, actually. That question has been answered in chapter 18 of Luke. He said he spoke a parable to them. Remember that parable. Go back. Back. Yeah. Then he spoke a parable to them that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. Why we lose heart? That's the question of this parable. So he said, there was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God nor regard man. A judge in antiquity is usually the king or the governor. Usually the judge is the ruler. They go to the head of the place of the state to judge between people. So that judge might be the greatest man in this city, the greatest man in the city. Usually, also in antiquity, they would make a grandfather or a patriarch a judge. In the case of Moses was Moses. The case of Abraham was Abraham, and all the big ones. So now there was a widow in that city. If you understood the widow in the circumstances of that day, of those days, is the lowest in the food chain, is the lowest in the socioeconomic status. Widows usually are left without any means of living. They have no way of supporting themselves. And many widows end up begging. You hear about that in the book of Acts, that widows were the focus of care in the church. The church used to collect food and clothing and some money for the widows. And there was a big conflict in the book of Acts about differentiating the widows of the Jews from the Gentiles, from the Greeks. So widows were very poor. So you contrast a very strong man, a judge, the king, with the widow, who is the poorest of the poor. And she came to him saying, "Get justice for me from my adversary." She's distressed. She's really in bad situation. She doesn't really know what to do. Someone or some family or another group of people took advantage of her weakness, and now she is distraught. And she would go to the judge and ask him, "Get me justice. I need my right." You can imagine the status of this woman. And he would not for a while. But afterward, he said within himself, "Though I do not fear God, nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continued coming, she weary me." Okay, now, what is this about? So this parable, this story that Jesus made up, is that the widow could not force the king to act on her behalf, because usually a king starts looks for a reward. There's nothing in it for him. She's not a rich woman. She's not going to give him anything. She's not powerful, so she cannot really bargain with him by any means. In the mind of this widow, as any people would be in her situation, I can't really force him to do anything. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. And if I talk or I no talk, he's not, I might as well give up. But no, wait a second. This widow did not give up. She begged and begged and most probably cried, and her tears were shown before the judge's door every day. So he's saying, the judge says, yeah, she's not strong. She's not anybody. She's not going to hurt me if I don't need to bother with her. But you know what? I'm going to get tired of her coming here. She's going to make my life miserable. I'm not going to be able to enjoy anything with this widow at my door every day. So then the Lord said, "Hear what the unjust judge," he called him unjust judge, said. And then he continues to say, "And shall God, the Father, not avenge his own elect, who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth?" Let me break this a little bit. So the first question is, who is this judge that Jesus is bringing to us? Imagine a person who does not fear God. nor has any respect for any man. Who is that? Who is this person that does not fear God? I mean, in Israel, everybody believed in God's existence. I'm not talking about atheists. At the time, even the Sadducees believed in God. But who is this person that does not fear God? Even the devil fear God. They tremble. The only person I can think of that does not fear God nor respect man is God himself. So, what is that about? It's actually about what we think of God. You and I think of God in this way. God is so mighty and so big, and he doesn't need me. I have no power over him. If him and I we will struggle, of course he will win. I cannot twist his arm. There is no way for me to make him do what I want. So why bother? Why bother? If I have an idea about God who is much, much more mighty than any person, and he cares about no one, why bother asking him for anything if at the end of it he's going to do whatever he wants? This widow didn't say that. She said, yes, but he will be touched by my tears. When I beg him enough, he will do what I want. And then Jesus said, listen to what that unjust judge said. How about much more about your Father in heaven? Will he not get justice for his own elect? Of course he would. So what's he saying, Jesus? He says, you, talking to us, the people of the church, his children, you and I, you think of God in this terrible way that he cares less about what you think or what you want. When you pray, you give up very quickly because you don't think he's going to give you what you want. But I have a better image of my Father than this. I'm going to tell you, even if you have that image, think of him as being wearied by fighting him all the time. That's exactly what Jacob had done in that night. He did not let God go. He didn't let that messenger, that angel, leave, and he kept begging and bugging until the angel gave it to him. He said, so what's your name? He said, Jacob. No more, he said. Your name shall be Israel, because you fought with God and with men, and you prevailed. How did he prevail? Actually, physically, at the end of that night, the angel touched the socket of his hip, and he was dislocated. Dislocated hip, yes, but victorious. He won the blessing. He got out of there with assurance he's not going to die, nor his brother will touch any of his children. And in fact, it went peacefully. His brother didn't touch him. He didn't have any harm happening. And Jacob went on living. And his family continued the blessing, continued the line of Abraham. So this is a message to us, those of us who lose heart in prayer. Please don't lose heart. This is not the God we know. The God we know is that he will give you what you're looking for if you keep persisting, especially if there's something fair. Especially if you're scared. If you're scared and there's a danger coming your way, just keep at it and don't lose heart. That's what he said at the beginning. He said that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. Why would Jacob lose heart? Very simply, because he was in the wrong. He knew, I don't have anything, to, have a credit before God. I don't have even a face to stand before him and look him in the eyes and say, I need this. No, I didn't feel that way. He begged knowing that he's not really in the right. But he begged God, who is a merciful God, who does not want his death. And he got it. This is very important. That's Genesis 32. Do not forget Gethsemane, and do not forget Luke 18. As you remember the story of Jacob wrestling, remember those two nights, the night of Jacob and the night of Christ, and also remember the widow and the judge. That's the experience that Jesus is telling us about. This is his life. This is what he knew about his Father. That's what he's trying to tell us about his Father. It's up to us, you and me, to take advantage of it and correct our own misunderstanding, our poor images of the Father. Let's go back to chapter 33 and continue. So now we're talking about the meeting that happened. Genesis 33 is the actual meeting between Jacob and his brother. When he crossed the Jordan, was at sunrise, early dawn. That means he spent the whole night in that. And this is why everybody recommend, even Pope Shuda had a big poem on staying up night and struggling with God. He said that close the door and debate or beg or debate in the darkness of the night, Jesus, and fill the night. What does he say? Fill the night with cries and tears. That's what he said in his poem. It's a beautiful poem, and it made into a song. So now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there he didn't sleep yet. He's still in this dusty case where he is limping on his. I'm sure this is one of the rare cases of hair turning white overnight. I'm sure this is what he looked like. He looked like a very old man, tired, weary, with gray hair and like droopy eyes. I'm sure his face was covered with dry tears, and you can see, it's on his beard still wet. And he looked terrible, actually. Looked terrible. So that Jacob that was, strong and young and full of life, now is a ruin of a human being. So Esau is coming with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel, of course, and Joseph last. Benjamin is not there yet. He's not born. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times. He crossed to where Esau was. He kept bowing 7 times. This is great humility. And here is one of the places where we say metanias to the people. It's actually all over the Bible, the Old and the New. It shows humility. It shows courtesy. It's a very polite act to do as a person behave himself like a servant to his brother. Until he came near to his brother. Every few steps he would bow down all the way to the ground. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him. Beautiful. Esau, his brother, felt bad. I'm sure he looked at him and said, wow, Jacob is now, we are twins, actually, Jacob and I, but he looked like he's 100 years older than me right now. He felt bad for him, I'm sure, and he missed him. So he embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Again, this is the second one. On his way, and there must be some reason why the Bible is mentioning this. On his way out to go to his uncle, he ran and embraced Rachel and fell on her neck and kissed her. And this, in his way back, it is his brother that ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept, both of them. Very emotional, it's like a family reunion, and not in the best circumstances. A lot of hurt feelings, a lot of, and I'm sure this is a time of healing. This is something that we also need to know. When you go in a conflict and meet someone and you have prayed and spent time in prayer before you go, there will be healing in the conflict. I remember many stories about this. One of them I keep in my memory. One of the older priests had told us this in the time of Pope Carolus. Used to be a priest who, before his time of priesthood, he was a lawyer. So the Pope Carolus entrusted him with the conversion cases, not conversion to Christianity, cases that converted from Christianity to Islam. And the Muslim law and the law of the governor's law in Egypt, and they said, out of fairness and courtesy to the church, I'm sure this was fought for very hard. Any case that any person who wants to convert to Islam, they bring him to the police station and they invite a priest to speak to him for the last time, to give a chance so that the church would not complain that he was converted by force. So that would be obvious that the church was given a chance to talk to her child before he leaves the church. So that priest was entrusted with these cases. He used to go to the police station and debate or talk or do something with the person that is converting. One day, the sheriff, the head of the police in that station, came very angrily to Pope Carlos and complained. He said, the priest you had given us to talk to the converts is very violent. He comes with cusses and curses, and he's very angry. He actually is extremely angry with us. It's intolerable. We need a change him, or do something with him. It's not really easy. We're trying to help him. He doesn't want to help himself. He's very angry. Every time he comes to the police station for one of those cases, he's just completely out of his mind, and he actually give us very hard time. And he gives the child, if I was a Christian and I'm converting and this priest comes to talk to me, I will not come back. So Pope Carlos was not very happy. He said, okay, my son, I will talk to him. I will see what I can do. So he brought that Abuna and sat him down, and he gave him hard time. Pope Carlos was not very happy with him. He said, Abuna, do you pray before you go to the police station, or you just depend on you being an ex-lawyer? He said, no, Sayyidina, I confess, I don't have the time to pray. I just go right into the police station. He said, okay, Abuna, when there is a case like this, usually give him a hint before 2-3 days. Go and pray a liturgy, see what happens. And Pope Carlos said in a very calm way. And please, Abuna, don't go without doing this. So Abuna respected Pope Carlos a lot, and he did exactly what he said. Very interestingly, the police station never complained about Abuna again, and there was a great peace. And many of the kids who were converting came back. He was like an agent of healing, just because he had spent a night or few hours in prayer. So the effect of the prayer of a person of God has a great result. It goes very far. You saw that before he kissed Rachel and found her, he had spent, actually heaven prayed for him. He had seen the heavenly vision with the ladder. On his way back, he had struggled with God the whole night. In both cases, he was successful in initiating and healing. So, and Esau lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, who are these with you? That's Esau. Jacob said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. You see the language is very humble. Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. They're acting like slaves. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. It's peaceful now. It's really safe. So they came in the order of importance. And Esau said, what do you mean by all this company which I met? And Jacob said, these are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. Like, this is so that you can actually, feel good about me. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. He didn't want to take it from him. It's a lot. That's nice. Jacob said, no, please. If I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face, as though I had seen the face of God. You were pleased, and you were pleased with me. And this is the true feeling. He's not trying to butter up Esau or, talk nice to him. That's how he feels. Jacob feels that he was meeting death, not his brother. So the fact that Esau is meeting him, embracing him, and crying and hugging and talking nice to him, as if like he has a resurrection. What if death passes? You got a resurrection right there. Please take my blessing. He said, the least I can do. Jacob is not stingy. He's not really frugal. He's not going to hold back a gift. He's going to say, oh, he refused. It's okay. I'll keep the things. No, he didn't say that. He willingly and out of his good heart gave him what he thought as a small price, a small gift, a return for his life and the life of his family. He was very happy to do that. because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have enough. So he urged him, and Esau took it. Then Esau said, let us take your journey. Let us go, and I will go before you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and the herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. It could be true, but Jacob is smarter than that. He knows his brother, and he knows um, how humans are very easily changed. So he doesn't want to risk it anymore. He said, it is better to separate on a note of peace and love and hugging and kissing than to stay and something bad happens and I will go back into the same murder mode. So we don't want to do that. So let's just leave it as this. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure till I come to my Lord in Sair. He's telling him he's going to go to Sair, but Jacob is not going to go to Sair. Sair is the place where Esau and the whole kingdom of Edom will live. And Esau said, now let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. So let me give you some guards. But Jacob said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Sair. He didn't let him leave anybody. Very smart. Jacob is extremely smart. It doesn't mean that you're a man of God to be naive and to be gullible and to accept whatever. Jacob sees that it's not Esau, it was God. It was God who made that peace. So he doesn't want to depend on Esau's character or mood or any of it. He doesn't look to humans, which is going to be learned. Jacob already learned his lesson. He's not going to depend on a human might. No way he's going to depend on human mights from now on. He is looking to God, and from God, he's going to take his peace. So Esau's trying to get him, you see that a lot, actually. People come together and be friends. And then 2 weeks later, they're the worst enemies, deadly enemies. And they come a little bit and they fight, and then they separate for years, 2-3 years. And then someone comes and make peace between them, and they come back and they are fine. 2 weeks later, they are again the mortal enemies. It happens over and over again, right? So those who wants to live a steady life, they need to look to the Lord. They don't need to look to humans. Human relationships never made human life peaceful. Don't look to humans, right or left, big or small, prestigious or humble. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth. He didn't go to Sair. I'm just trying to tell you, this is the last of Jacob tricks. He's not going to do it anymore. That's it. The last of his of his lies. So Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of that place is called Succoth, means tabernacles. That's a feast. The feast of Israel, one of the feasts of Israel, is called the feast of Succoth. Succoth means the tabernacle or a tent. So he built his tents. He made a house for himself, but built tents for his servants and livestock, and there he made a little town. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem. Now we're going to go into that drama that happens in Shechem. It's a harsh story, and I would recommend keeping little kids in their bedrooms when we are reading the story, because it's harsh, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city of Shechem. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel, the God of Israel. Now, why is he calling it that way? Shechem is the city. Shechem is the name of the son of the leader of the city, of the governor of the city. The governor, his name is Hamor. Hamor is the governor. His son is Shechem, and he named the city in the name of his son, Shechem. So Jacob went before the door of that city, in front of the door, most probably to kind of trade, find things to buy and sell, and to make life. And maybe there was a well there where he needed to get some water until he kind of situated himself in the land where he needed to be. So when he said, I want to go back a little bit, when he said that he made a house, it's not actually building um, a house as we think about it. It's a place of living. So he made a place of living, but all of his life was living in a tent. It doesn't make sense that he built a house and leave. So when he goes to Sakuth, he builds himself a house, meaning he made himself a place of living for himself, his wives, his children, and Jacob, as well as Isaac and Abraham, they were all tent dwellers. They never settled. Esau, on the other hand, was he built himself a house, a stationary house, and also as well as the other one, which was Lot. In the time of Abraham, he lived in a house in a city with walls. But you're going to see that Jacob does not stay in a place; he lives in a tent, and whoever is with him is living in tents. Sakuth, they call it Sakuth, where they lived in tents. Why he called him El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel? Because he changed his name. He changed his name. One thing you need to know, that God's name was taken from the experience the people of God have. I hope you understand what I'm saying. The name of God was dependent on the very intimate experience they had. So, when he says the God of Israel, what does that mean? It was the angel who told him, what's your name? His name is Jacob. He said, no, I'm changing your name. Your name from now on is not going to be Jacob, but Israel, means the one who fought with God and prevailed. So when he says the God of Israel, means that person that I met in the wilderness at night, who fought with me, and I kind of persisted and insisted to see his mercy and his grace, and he granted it to me. That one name indicated the whole experience of Jacob about the God of mercy. And we said that God of Israel has shown that his mercy prevails over his justice. From justice point of view, Jacob deserves nothing. He deserves to die, actually, because of what he had done to his brother and to had done to his father. His father later knew that his son deceived him. He called himself Esau, and he acted like Esau while he's Jacob. And that's not very disrespectful to the father who is a blind. That's a curse by itself, by the way. To deceive a blind person in the Old Testament, it's actually Moses is going to bring that curse. When you take a blind person and lead them in the wrong direction to make fun of them or to gain, that's a curse. And to take his brother blessing by deceit and take advantage of his brother when he's hungry, these are all awful actions. God will never bless something like that. Justice says he deserves to die. Mercy says, no, he's begging for me, and I will speak louder. And God's mercy prevailed against God's justice. And that's why he called him the God, the God of Israel, meaning that's his personal experience of God. This is what the God he knew. Now, he was the God of Abraham, he was the God of Isaac, but now he is the God of Israel. That's a very special title for Jacob. And I think about us too. Do we have experiences of God? What would you call God if you're going to name God? I'll tell you one experience that all of us should have. The experience of Christ. What's the experience of Christ? What would he call God? What Jesus would call God? He already did.
Father.
Father, Baba. He called him Abba. So that's the experience Jesus is trying to give us. And he said, from now on, you're not going to call him the God of Abraham or Isaac because you didn't have those experiences. But what you, the people of the New Testament, will call God, you will call him Abba, Father. Not just because he is the creator and the source of life, but because through me, he has very intimate relationship with you. And he will give you anything for you to live and to prevail over Satan, to prevail over sin, and to have grace when you don't deserve it, to have everything that the Father has, and to inherit all things because of me. That's what Jesus said. So our altar today that is erected in the church is erected to the Father. And on that altar, we offer his Son. And intimately, we call him our Father. So we're going to stop here. And then next time, we'll talk about, brace yourselves now. We're going to talk about rape and murder. That is next chapter. It's really harsh. And it is a human drama. Now we were dealing with God's grace and the heavenly things. Now we're going to go to earth and find out what the Canaanites are like. It's a terrible thing, but it's actually speaks to our time. The mix of human what do you call it? Human drama, human romance, violence, desire, all that mix that got so polluted by the devil. And then how could that be redeemed? And the Old Testament could not redeem it at all. At all. There was no way. This drama had to be resolved somehow in a bloody way. But otherwise, if we ask Christ today, he said, I came to resolve that drama. And there will be a redemption. But in those days, there was only one way to redeem things. So let's look to the next chapter if you want to read it ahead. And we're going to talk about the topic of rape, PTSD, like the place of women in that time and the place of revenge and the dealing between people of the world and the people of God and how things got so confused and the differences between the two groups. We're going to talk about all of that and maybe we will have some good discussion. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but we'll talk about what is the consequences of the absence of God. When God is absent, some people say about humanism, how people are some people are very good, even they are not Christians. Yeah, how good can a person be? But without Christ, it's really gloomy, really gloomy. And even the best of us will not be able to do whatever. They will get confused in some situations, get so dark and so gloomy that a person cannot know what to do. So let's see what happens in that chapter. We know what the people of God is like. See how Jacob, you can tell Jacob in this chapter was a meek like a dove, humble and bow down 7 times and cries and kisses his brother. But he is very wise like a snake. When his brother tried to be extra affectionate, he said, stop there. We're not going further. You're just going to have to go your way. I go my way. We end on a good note and let's have peace. But then I'm going to talk about what is the story when you have people outside the family, all together outside the family, dealing with the people of God. What would happen? That's a very interesting interaction, like a chemistry formula of having two opposite things, like alkali and acid coming together. What would happen? Okay, all right. Any questions? Let's say our Father. In the name of the Father and the Son, the Holy Spirit, make us worthy, O Lord, to say thankfully, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory now. May the love of God the Father and grace of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. Peace be